So welcome to those who have joined us for our session on the Master of Public and Social Policy. We have a really insightful webinar for you this evening. Before our panel discussion involving students with the program, I'm really pleased to present our first speaker, who is Dr Toby Fattore. Dr Fattore is a senior lecturer with Macquarie's School of Social Science. He'll be kicking us off with this session, providing some insights into the Master of Public and Social Policy, or MPSP. So welcome, Toby, and I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Ella. It's a really privilege to be able to speak to you all tonight. And as an academic member of staff, I teach into the program and also I convene the program. So it's great to be able to talk to you about the Master of Public and Social Policy. So if you go to the next slide, I want to introduce the degree a little bit by talking about how the major issues facing Australia today and also into the future. And really, in Australia and across the world, they all have a social dimension. If we think about, for example, what we're seeing today with both vaccine uptake, vaccine protest, or other broader issues such as poverty or food security or climate change or inequality, these all have some kind of social dimension. And so the Master of Public and Social Policy equips students to find solutions to these major challenges that we're confronting by developing your skills to make sense of the world through essentially critical inquiry. And specifically, it does this through having this dual focus on applied social research and on policy analysis. And I want to go into those a little bit further now. So the social research skills help you inquire into the social world. That is, what is the evidence of what is occurring? But policy-related skills gives you a set of tools to bring about social change. This is how we might best make the kinds of decisions using the evidence that we obtain or can analyse and taking into account other factors to deal with some kind of need or a problem that we are seeking to address. So really now more than ever, because of a complex challenge that we're facing in society, we need people with those skills. And so that's what this degree is designed to produce. If you graduate from this degree, you have capabilities to do so. It gives you a deep understanding of the forces that shape the world, of policy, and the processes involved in making. So if we go to the next slide, I can give you some examples of this dual focus in some of the things that we might do in some of the tasks that we set for students, even in seminars or as assignments. So, and really it's about developing skills as a social scientist. Now, these are just examples of things which not only mimic what you might do in class, if you're undertaking any of the units in the Master of Public and Social Policy, but actually the things that you might be asked to do if you obtain a position in data analysis or as a policy advisor or in some kind of policy role. So for example, in this particular scenario, what we've created here, we are getting a mock situation where we set up some kind of minister wanting to make some policy change, right? And it's essentially a scenario which is about using the rules around alcohol sale and applying them to mobile phone use in children and young people. And so you would have to then work on this particular problem and qualified advice based on evidence to, for example, a decision maker, which in this case might be a minister. So this would require you to think about the different dimensions that are involved in the problem, who are the stakeholders, who has an interest in this particular issue, balancing out those interests, and then coming up with some kind of informed and critical decision. So in that sense, you have to develop expertise across a range of topic areas. And this is what the degree enables you to do, so that you don't become an expert in just one field. You become a capable expert across a range of areas and therefore can give policy advice and informed decision-making across a range of areas, whatever that interest may be in. So if we go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about evidence. So this is an exercise where we get students to undertake some kind of observation exercise of the world around them. So whether we simulate that either in the classroom or we actually get people to go out into the field and they observe what is occurring and to use that evidence to make some decisions. So this is about the social research skills. So, and here you obtain, for example, skills in undertaking qualitative methods, which typically involve studying the meanings, perceptions, and understandings that people have of a particular situation. But we also teach people in quantitative skills, if you go to the next one. So here we've got, if we go to the next slide. So quantitative methods, whilst we're waiting for that, typically involve measuring social attributes, opinions, and behaviours of people. Now here we've got some evidence which demonstrates the relation between murder rates and consumption of ice cream. So you would critically analyse this. Of course, what would be underlying both factors about murder rates in a particular area and consumption of ice cream? So therefore, you would critically analyse and engage with and interrogate data. So, so you not only produce evidence, but you're able to also critically analyse and obtain evidence. Okay. But essentially the degree is 8 units, 8 core units, which you can undertake in 12 months or longer. You can do it at your own pace. And 4 of those are about how you do policy. It gives you a sense of policy tools, policy concepts, and policy theory. So essentially you can use these skills to make good decisions to any particular scenario. And then the other 4 are about social research. They are about how you might run an evaluation, how you might do a social impact assessment, and how you do qualitative and quantitative social research. So in that way, you get the skills to be able to collect evidence, critically analyze evidence, and also apply that evidence to decisions. All right, so if we go to the next slide, which I can talk about more about those units later on. So what do you do? What can you do with this degree? Now, if you do a master's degree in nursing or a master's degree in optometry, well, you're pretty much qualified to be a nurse or an optometrist. But if you do a Master of Public and Social Policy, you're qualified for a range of positions. And this is because the Masters of Public and Social Policy emphasises a core set of skills applicable to a broad range of vocational areas. So Graduate Careers Australia, their statistics show that approximately 90% of graduates in social sciences are employed full-time, and their median starting income is between $80,000 and $100,000 per year. And our graduates, they work in a whole range of things. They work in community development, as educators, as evaluators, as consultants in human resources, as well as the more typical roles as a policy officer or as a social researcher. And they are employed across a whole diverse range of industries, in advocacy, in overseas aid organisations, in government at all levels, for consultancy firms, in the large corporate enterprises. So essentially this degree really skills you with jobs which certainly exist now, but also more importantly, certain jobs which you might not even know about, which will exist into the future. So I'll just move on to the next slide and then finish off. And then we can move on to the discussion. So basically the Master of Public and Social Policy qualifies you with a set of skills that are highly adaptable. In particular, the degree emphasises abilities to research, adapt and apply knowledge. And this gives our graduates a real advantage. Okay, so I think we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for providing that really informative overview of the degree. For more details on intro requirements, course structures, how to apply, the subjects that you'll be studying, etc., do just visit our courses.mq.edu.au. So now joining Toby for our panel discussion are 2 MPSP students at 2 different stages of their degree. So it's really great for anyone watching who isn't sure how they're going to approach their degree. The 2 students that we have done it in a completely different way, which is awesome. So it shows you how flexible the degrees are here at Macquarie. Honoured to introduce Sian Bullingham, a current MPSP student who started her 2nd year of the program, as well as Damaris Quintero, studying the program while part-time, while working as a project evaluation officer for a mental health organisation of trauma and torture. So for our audience, please join in the conversation that we will have with our panelists at any time by typing your questions for any of the panelists through the Q&A function. And that's just at the bottom of your screen. Those can be for one of the panelists, all of them, or just anything you want to know in general about Macquarie. So I will welcome the current students. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'll pass over to Sian first. Where you are in your career journey and why did you choose to study the Master of Public and Social Policy?
Yeah, so I'm in my second year of the Master's Social and Public Policy, and I started this about halfway through last year, where I just come back from working overseas and kind of looking for a new role to do. Just come back from working in the United Nations as well in Indonesia. So trying to look for a career path I could follow where I was looking to work in an organisation that really worked at the grassroots level and looking for practical solutions that really worked with other people.
I work as a project evaluation officer for a mental health organization. Our clients are mainly survivors of torture and trauma in the refugee context. My professional journey has been more straightforward. I have been working in social intervention programs since I graduated from my bachelor in sociology, especially with survivors of armed conflict and war. I started my postgraduate course 12 years after I finished my bachelor, just a few years after I arrived in Australia. When I came here to Australia as a migrant, I felt that I need to learn more, that I needed to update my skills to continue working on my field. I didn't study social and public policy directly in my bachelor, so I thought that this could be a good opportunity to complement my studies and experience overseas. So what I did was I searched for masters in social policy and research in Sydney and different universities. And for me, there were a few points that were very important to choose a master's. Was a master that combined social research and policy, because not all of them do that. A master that could be that I was able to apply what I learned into specific social contexts and realities, that in my case is migration issues. That is my personal interest. And the other thing was to understand the Australian context, and as a migrant, for me, was important to understand the local context in terms of policy to be able to work in my field.
Thank you both so much for sharing. And I think it's really interesting how you both are studying the same masters at the same university, but have come to studying it in two completely different ways, which really highlights that this degree isn't just for one type of person, one type of student, and you guys are really showcasing that, which is great. I will start with Sian again, and then Damaris, feel free to follow up once she has finished. But Sian, what made you pursue a career in public and social policy? Was there a defining experience that kind of prompted your interest? Has it always been something that's been on your radar? What made you make that choice?
Social policy definitely wasn't on my radar specifically, especially going to my bachelor's degree. I focused on business and international relations, so I wanted to kind of pursue that role working overseas in corporations or business to really work at a very different level. However, going overseas, I got the opportunity to work with the United Nations in Jakarta, and working there at a really large, really high level corporation. We didn't really get to interact much on the ground. And I saw how much more effective small organizations were in comparison to large businesses or large offices. So coming back to Australia, it's COVID-19, trying to figure out what I want to do. And then I found the Master's Social Public Policy here, and having a look through it and how much it focused on community level connections rather than a generalized theory, I really thought that this was the best course of action for me, and I'm really enjoying it since then. It's been a lot more practical than any of the other courses I've tried. And it's really meant I and developing actual skills I can use, and also reflect on past experiences and see how I could have done something better or how that could be improved on in the future.
In my case, I have been working in social intervention programs for a while, since I graduated from my bachelor's, and where that has given me the opportunity to actually see how policies can change the way that we do things, that society do things. So, for example, a migration policy can establish how who can come to Australia and how that process can be done. So in that way, we can see how a policy can really affect people's lives. So personally, I have been always interested in how to address social issues. In my case, specifically about migration issues. And working in public and social policy, I think, is a very clear way to work towards that or help that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing for both of you those answers. And again, it's really interesting to see how many different kinds of people can get into this master's and how there are so many avenues for you both to pursue your passion within it and be able to have a career that's really super specialized to the area of interest that you both have, which is really great to see. I might direct this question to you, Doctor. What do you find usually attracts doing a career in public and social policy? Is there something at Macquarie that really draws them to it? What kind of students do we usually attract?
We attract a diverse range of students, and you can see from Coach Charlotte's experiences, they're actually quite diverse. But I think what attracts people in common is a real desire to be able to make change, but in a way which is evidence-based, which is critical, which is logical, and also which is practical, right, and achievable. And so what we do in the degree is that we cover off both ways of thinking critically about how you approach the broad problems, so that, you know, that we may be interested in making changes in, both at the community level and also at, say, more at all the way through to maybe international global politics. But we also then we convert that with very, very practical skills. So when you leave a degree, you know, you can walk into a job and you can say, yes, I know how to undertake research, I know how to write a briefing paper, I know how to do an evaluation, I know how to evaluate data, I know how to do some kind of social impact assessment, I know how to, you know, communicate policy decisions. And so I think all of these things attract people to the Macquarie degree. And actually it's quite unique. There's other policy degrees out there, but they don't do that, right? They might have a particular focus on a content area, but not necessarily in the skills base, or combining that with the kind of rigors of social research. And so we have a diverse range of students, people coming from the undergraduate programs in a whole range of areas. People who have work experience within the organisations or in the policy group, and they want to develop their skills a little bit more or credentialise their skills. And we also have people who have got a career in a particular perspective and they want to change career. And so we, those three cohorts generally work really well together. So really, we don't assume any particular knowledge, but we do want people to develop a certain kind of critical capacity and perspective and orientation to the work.
Thank you so much for highlighting that. And I think you really ended on a great point there that kind of ties into why a lot of students do pick Macquarie, is that students come from a range of backgrounds, a range of bachelor's degrees that they've studied prior, but that actually is a real attribute to degrees like this one. You can all support each other. You all have a difference in experience, and then that can complement what you're studying really nicely. So thank you for highlighting that. I think a lot of students that are currently studying find that that's very true as well. I will do this question for all of you. So we'll go around in the same order. So Sean, Damaris, and then I'll end with you, Doctor. What do you consider the future of the industry is? As a career that you all are pursuing in different ways, what do you think the future might entail? Where do you see it in 5 or 10 years? Do you think it's a growing area? Where do you kind of see yourself?
In terms of the industry in general, I definitely see a growth towards more inclusive, more coordinated practices. So I believe in the past, a lot of policies have been developed with assumptions that aren't necessarily grounded in research, but as more skills and more techniques are being developed, there's definitely a move towards having a greater involvement in whatever community is being researched or the actual policy itself. Also, there's a lot more ongoing reviews, so which really builds the strength and the longevity of new social policies. For myself, I mean, I can't say particularly that I have a specific goal or a specific social issue that I'm working towards, but more and more I'm learning that there's a huge range of social issues and huge range of solutions to them. So there's a lot of potential for anyone who goes into this to really develop and explore and keep your options open as well, because the more narrow you go, the more you actually exclude other opportunities or other ideas.
Okay, I would say that public and social policy, what I believe will exist as long as we have social needs and issues that need to be addressed. Because that, I haven't finished my postgraduate course yet, but I think that the skills and knowledge from public and social policy can be applied to a different type of area, different type of areas and in different type of roles. And I say universities, government departments, private sectors, no-profit organizations. I just believe it's important because through social and public policy, we are able to understand social issues, we are able to understand needs, we are able to understand how those policies or policy decisions can impact people's life and can impact the overall well-being of a society.
I mean, just going off what Damaris and Sean was saying, you know, January last year, we had an inkling about this thing called, you know, COVID-19 and the impacts that was, you know, and we didn't really know what the impacts were going to be. However, so many social scientists did. They had predicted the implications of something like a pandemic and the effects it might have in terms of income inequality, creating new inequalities, how people cope, some of the mental health issues, and also, so there was some degree that social scientists were able to predict that, and that led into planning. You know, what we saw as, what many people saw as unforeseeable, many people, many social scientists, the people who we train in this degree, did. And not only that, during the last 18 months, it's been social scientists who've been actually working, often quietly, beside public health experts, trying to think about, well, how can things like a public health advice, how do we plan public health interventions, how do we address things like vaccine hesitancy, and doing that in a way which is using often data obtained from a whole range of perspectives, both quantitative, big data sets, but also then asking people about their experiences and how they make sense of the world. And both of those things are critical. Now, our students can do that. Now, if we think about what we're going to do in 5 years' time, given that we couldn't, you know, that this pandemic, you know, has occurred, it's really fundamentally changed certain things and not others. And we can also think about, well, you know, what we really need are skills to be able to, you know, critically analyze information. We need to rely on people who can critically analyze information, who can create information, and we can direct other people in the use of that information, right? So that's what we need. And I think in 5 years' time, we're going to have people graduating from this degree who will be able to do exactly that. And that's why I think you should, also join us and, and undertake the degree with us. And, you can also, meet lovely people like Maris and Shannon, also who are already involved. That's where I think we'll be going. I think we'll be equipping graduates with a range of skills that can respond to the unpredicted challenges that we can't really foresee.
Perfect. Thank you so much for all of those responses. And you can see through all three of your responses that you're super passionate about the area, and we can see that there is such a growing need for it. So it's really great that this program does exist, and we get really passionate graduates and really passionate unit conveners that help us run this course, because as you can see, it produces really, really passionate results. So we will head over to the live Q&A now. So if you guys do have any questions that any three of our panelists have raised so far, please just do drop them in the question panel at the bottom of your toolbar. But I will start with one for you, Doctor. One of our participants is wondering, they hold a Bachelor of Chemical Engineering with some grade of honours. Would you consider this a base degree useful in combination with the Masters? Is there a degree that you would recommend someone having while they were getting into the Masters?
Look, I mean, so there's a whole range of policy areas. So, for example, if this person wants to do work at a policy level in the chemical engineering space, or to apply that, for example, in developing new industries or sustainable industries, I should say, they could combine their science backgrounds with the skills which we offer in the Masters. So it actually, people with science degrees need to also make science policy. And often people with science degrees in and of themselves aren't necessarily the best equipped to then implement their extraordinary knowledge that they've developed in these very applied contexts to more social issues, because science has social impacts. So yes, we do have people who have science degrees who work in the natural sciences, or a psychologist in the human sciences. They often come into the degree. So actually, there's a whole range of people with a diverse range of undergraduate degrees who are doing the program. So we don't really limit it on that basis.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I think, again, you raise a really great point about the fact that the students in this degree, and therefore the graduates that come out of this degree, they don't have one type of experience, and then they can bring forward diversity in their future careers because of their diverse, potentially undergrad experience, or cultural experiences, or just their interest in the area, which is a really interesting take on it. I will direct another question to you, Doctor. For our audience wondering if this program's for them, I know we have program, but attributes that really help students in this degree. Are there particular personality qualities, interests that you find that a lot of successful graduates end up having?
Okay, so you did. Okay, so if I got your question right, are there particular attributes that people go to have? In a way, I think it's someone who has an inquiring mind and a curiosity to investigate the world around them. And I suppose even if you don't come in with that, we certainly develop that in you. There's a range of, we try and resource people for a whole range of skills, a diverse range of skills, which both challenge areas where people feel as though they need to strengthen, and also work into people's strengths, right, in terms of their personalities, their prior knowledge, and their attributes. And you can see that in the diversity of the degree. So we get people to work individually, we get people to work as part of groups. We ask people to present information in different ways. We get them to do qualitative research, which requires some degree of interpersonal engagement. And we also ask people to do quantitative research, which involves some degree of, not based on mathematics, but some degree of being able to think about the implications of numbers and data. So I think we cater for a whole range of attributes and personalities.
And that's a great thing about Macquarie as well. So thank you again for highlighting that there isn't one kind of Macquarie student, there isn't one kind of master's student. And as you said, you really do reap the benefits of that. And the course does, of course, teach you some attributes that is really helpful to have, but it's great that the course can really stay flexible and stay open for all the kinds of students that are interested. Damaris, I might flick this next question to you, and then Sean, we can see if you have any follow-up comments. How flexible do you find the course? This student is thinking about the course, but want to see if they can fit it in with any family or work commitments. So Damaris, I'll head to you first.
Okay, thank you. Look, one thing that for me was very important when I was going to choose the master's was the because I wasn't able to study, or I'm not able to study full time. I have family, I have a small baby, and I work. So I have to share my life, you know, all my commitments and my responsibilities, including university, between all of that. So I found actually that Macquarie is very flexible in that sense and very supportive. There are many things that students can approach, or areas that students can approach to get help. Is the well-being department that is actually very helpful as well. I actually have been using that, and I have found it very useful and very helpful. So you have, like, for example, a mental or physical health need. I think in Macquarie has a good team that can support that. I found teachers are very approachable, and they understand a lot, like, personal circumstances. So you can talk to them and they can work with you depending on what is your need or what is your issue and things like that. So yeah, I found that actually is quite flexible.
Oh, that's great. And it's really cool to hear about from a student firsthand, which I'm sure a lot of students online listening right now will be super thankful for, that you can have a family life, have a working life, and still be able to study, have enough time in the day to get all of that accomplished. So thank you for sharing that. Sean, do you have any further comments about how flexible you find the course? Was this one of your queries when you were looking at master's courses as well?
Yeah, definitely. So when I first came in, I didn't really have a clear career path in mind. I just wanted to come in and do something I felt very passionate about. So I started off full-time in my first semester, but this year, first and second semester, I've actually dropped down to part-time. And I found it works well, and it doesn't impact my learning by any means. A lot of the courses really feed into each other at your own speed, at your own time. Really helps you to develop the skills, develop the knowledge that you can apply in any other course. So you don't have to do them in any particular order, not like an undergraduate degree by any means. You can take it at your own pace, really investigate what you want in each course, and it is very self-driven. So if you find you can't focus too much on one course, you can come back to it a little bit later. There's no there is pressure, of course, to do the assignments, but there is a lot of help available. I've used the Macquarie Help Centre a little bit as well, and getting extensions or talking to our professors has been really easy and so helpful in making sure you can get through the course and do it in a way that suits you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for highlighting that. And you touched on a lot of points that I think make Macquarie a really unique choice and a really good choice for students. Like you said, being able to talk to your lecturers and tutors, getting extensions when they're needed, and being able to drop down to part-time study and it not impact your learning quality, like you highlighted, is something that's really important. And I think a lot of students is quite a sense of concern and worry when they aren't sure about how to get into their masters or their postgraduate degrees. So thank you so much for highlighting that. I will direct this last question to all of you. Doctor, I might start with you. How do you see the role policy analysts playing in the current COVID-19 crisis? What sort of important jobs have they done in the back end that we don't really see on social media? This student is really interested, so they'd love to hear your response.
Policy analysts have been critical. So from being able to translate health advice, which is given by epidemiologists, into things like advertising campaigns and their effectiveness, to the high-level plan, which is made around the stages for vaccine rollout and also the stages for reopening. This was all done by policy analysts, quite critical. So at that high level, but you also have people who are working on the ground with community, seeing what community needs are, finding out what's occurring, what the lived experience of the pandemic is and what issues they raise, and helping and using that to inform decisions to support people in their daily experiences of the pandemic. And often these people aren't seen because they quietly and diligently go around talking to people, obtaining evidence and informing decisions.
And that's really interesting because, as this student highlighted in their question and as you highlighted in your answer, so thank you so much for that, that a lot of it does go unseen behind kind of closed doors. And I think with this current COVID-19, it's something that everyone has got really involved in and everyone is quite engaged with. It isn't just what we see on the surface, and there is a lot more that goes on behind the scenes. Is really interesting and really insightful for a course like this. So thank you so much for highlighting that. We will have to end our webinar here. If your question hasn't been answered live, we will email you a response in the coming business days. Macquarie, always reach out to Macquarie with any further questions that you have. So while that does bring us to the last question, I would just like to take a moment to thank all of our guests for joining us. I'm sure you all have very busy schedules, and we really do appreciate you taking the time out to be able to talk to us. And I'm sure all of the participants on this Zoom have been very thankful for it. So on behalf of Macquarie, I would just like to thank all of you. So we really do look forward to seeing you at Macquarie, and we hope this webinar has been really insightful for you. Take care, and we look forward to seeing you soon.